Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It's a very great pleasure for me to welcome you here on behalf of Prosperity UK. Now, many of you here know each other well, but you may not know so much about who or what Prosperity UK is and what the hell we're doing organising a conference on green Brexit when we don't know the first thing about the environment. And the answer is that Prosperity UK, we're a bunch of people from business, from politics, from academia, who have become increasingly frustrated by the paralysis in our political system. And we want to try to help kickstart a common sense debate about life after Brexit. We don't have an axe to grind. We don't have an agenda to pursue. We are a deliberate mix of Remainers and Leavers. We accept that Brexit is going to happen, but instead of endlessly refighting the referendum and trying to prove which of us was right and how we voted in 2016, I was obviously, we're much more interested in trying to have a serious discussion about what we all do next. Because every hour that we spend refighting those battles is an hour that we're not spending thinking about our future. And however we all voted, Brexit does demand that we think about the future. So much of our media and political debate seems to assume that it's the mere fact of Brexit itself which will guarantee success or doom us to failure. That all we have to do is leave the EU and we'll automatically discover the sunlit uplands or be plunged into the blackest depths. Well, the reality is going to be much harder, but also much more interesting. Because it may come as a shock to some, but not all homegrown UK regulation is automatically good and proportionate. And not all EU regulation is automatically stupid and harmful. The truth is that where we end up will depend in large part on the thinking we do now and the decisions we make about the policy tools that we will have in our own hands. So I think that to answer these questions, we first of all need to work out what kind of country we want to be, what kind of economy we want to have, and that is what I hope all of you gathered here today can help us with. And as well as thinking boldly, I'd also urge you to go broad and not confine yourselves to specific issues that might be changed directly as a result of Brexit in areas where legislative control will pass back to the UK. Now, I meet lots of companies who tell me that because of Brexit, they've been looking under the bonnet of the business, and as a result, they're making decisions that have nothing directly to do with Brexit, but which the process of asking fundamental questions has prompted them to make. And I think it should be the same for the country. Brexit gives us the opportunity to question all sorts of assumptions and ways of doing things. Now, why did we choose the theme of Green Brexit for today's conference? In part because it's an area where a lot of thinking is already going on, but it's also because in Michael Gove, we've got a Secretary of State who is intellectually alive and curious, and who in all the departments that he's been in has shown himself not just to be interested in ideas, but brave enough to bring about reform. Now, there is a huge amount of experience and know-how assembled today, and that underlines, I think, that this is an area where Britain really could lead the world and create new opportunities for sustainable growth. I hope you won't hold back, and looking at the speaker list, I don't think there is much chance of that. I'm sure we'll have a good debate, and we'll give Michael some new ideas and thoughts. I think the fact that so many of you have come at short notice, and that Michael is planning to stay here for a good chunk of today's debate, tells me that there is an appetite for this kind of event, and that we all want to move the discussion on. The only rule I would ask all of us to observe today is a self-denying ordinance. that every time you feel that urge bubbling up to refight the referendum, please repress it. And because I think it's important always, when we're talking about Brexit, to end on a positive note, there is one undeniably good thing that is going to come out of our leaving the EU. We are no longer going to have anyone else to blame. And that whole lazy cycle of victimhood and blaming everything on European bureaucrats is going to have to stop. And in future, it's going to be our homegrown British bureaucrats and politicians that we can blame, and maybe also praise when they get things right. Now let's get started, and who better to get us underway than Tony Juniper, who in the pantheon of environmental campaigners is about as close to Mount Olympus as you can possibly get. Tony.